good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you who have joined us today from wherever you are joining us. Welcome to Bifocal, clarifying business intelligence. We thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us here today. And today's episode on Bifocal is the Power BI development story. Please welcome your hosts for today, John P. White and Jason Himmelstein. Let's see.
Hey, there we go. Hi, John.
I think you can hear me, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can hear you, but that's okay. Well, even so, it's going to be a great show.
I thought maybe.
So how you doing?
I'm good. Are you going to give me a hard time about the weather again?
You know, it's too damn hot for me to do that, so no.
Well, we don't have snow on the ground anymore. After our last show, I lost power for about 16 hours, so at least we got the show in time.
Yeah, I'm glad we at least got that. Yeah, we've been having 90+ degree weather here, which is not very nice for a bigger gentleman like myself. And worse than that, we've had 2 straight weeks of massive hailstorms.
Oh, lovely.
We did not get hit at my house in the first one, but in the second one, my wife and younger son were on their way back from soccer practice, and the soccer practice got called, and they were on their way home, and the heavens just opened up as soon as they pulled into the neighborhood, and so we all sat there watching the hail. It was a big thing for us, watching the hail. You know, it's Passover right now, so that's one of the plagues. So we were a little bit worried But we didn't get any of the frogs or locusts or any of the other stuff, so I think we're going to be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just watch out for marks on your door.
Yes, I will do that. Those are good things, actually. That's what you want to do. So, man, we've got a lot to get through in today's show, and we have an amazing guest that we're both very, very excited about. And by the looks of our attendance today in the chat room, I'm pretty sure everybody else is very excited by Mr. Pattison as well.
Yeah, I would think so.
Let's get through the things we wanted to get through first, and then we will bring Ted on. So let's talk about, what are you up to these days, John?
Well, we've got a bunch of news items, but there's one I'm particularly pleased about today, and the timing couldn't have actually been better. I've been seeing if it's been available for the last few days, and this morning I checked, and yes, in fact, the new Power BI desktop is available. Why am I so excited about the new Power BI desktop, you ask?
Why are you so excited about the new Power BI desktop, John?
I'll show you. I'm just going to share a screen. This will be really, really, really quick, I promise. Here's our new Power BI desktop. Looks like the old Power BI desktop, but there's one special new feature in here. If you go ahead and get data, you've got all of the sources that you've come to know and love. But if you come down here to online sources and you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see this nice little logo right here, tyGraph, which if you'll notice matches this logo here. That's our product. We've had an ISV content pack, or basically a service in the Power BI service for quite some time, since last fall. But it wasn't in Power BI desktop, so you've kind of really made it to the big leagues when you get this far along. So we're really happy to see it make it into the product now. And basically, it's a simple matter. You just pick tyGraph, hit connect. You're going to enter in your key if you haven't already. I have, and you can start pulling your data. And that data, in the case of tyGraph right now, is Yammer-based data. So the tyGraph, as it stands in the marketplace today, is a tool that's used to do analytics on Yammer. It's going to be a tool that does all of Office 365, but we'll talk more about that in the future.
I'm very, very excited to hear more about that, John. Congratulations to you and the entire Unlimited Viz team. You have an amazing team behind you, and who really do all the work, I believe.
That's correct.
So congrats to your whole team. That's a huge feather in your cap. Congratulations on that.
Yeah. We're definitely happy about that. But so in addition to that, I mean, if like anything else matters, right? There's been a bunch of stuff. I mean, I don't think we did much in the way of news last time around. Mm-hmm. So I've carried over a couple of items from that. And one of the items I did want to mention today, it's a real big one. I did up a blog post on it. It's the new Analyze in Excel feature. I don't know if you've had a chance to work with it yourself at all yet.
I've played a little bit with it. Every time I tried, I ran into the 64-bit issue and was not actually able to overcome it when I was getting ready to do some demos. So, you know, the couple times I've gotten it to work have been very nice. I had to uninstall Office and go back to 32-bit in order to get that working. So I'm excited to get the 64-bit version working. I know they patched it, and so I think it's better now.
So if we get to tips and tricks, I can tell you how to do that. You should have asked.
No. I may have read your blog, John, and actually got it working that way. You know, want to see the afternoon tips and tricks a little bit more.
That's cool.
And I are both excited about the fact that SQL Server has gotten to release candidate 3. Hopefully, we're not going to see them follow the same model that Windows Server. It just got to Tech Preview 5.
No,
so I'm really hoping that we see it sooner than that.
They stated that this is the last Tech Preview, and they've been only a few weeks apart. So I'm pretty sure that RTM for SQL Server is just around the corner.
Keep crossing those fingers. I'm looking forward to it. I know it's going to be a very big thing for all of us when it does, especially given what's going to happen next week at the May 4th event for SharePoint. That's what I've been up to lately. I was out in Redmond for a little while. I went down and I ran the Dev Intersections conference. So I've been very focused on what's coming next, and the BI story in that is very exciting as well. Looking forward to that, but SQL Server has to get there in order for us to really jive for the on-prem story, as we heard from Kai and Gregory in our last show. And the Office.
Yeah, you were just about to say it.
And the stop, you know, getting the Office Online Server on-prem there as well. So looking forward to getting all of that meshed on-prem and being able to do the true hybrid solutions that we're all looking forward to. So.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I did actually. We just kind of mentioned it, but I meant to dive in and explain a little bit what the Analyze in Excel was all about. In case anybody isn't already aware of it, we've always had the feature in SharePoint, especially if you're using Power Pivot for SharePoint. Well, if you were using Power Pivot for SharePoint, of taking an Excel workbook that had an embedded data model and using that as the basis for another Excel workbook. So starting Excel and doing a different analysis, but on the same data that's in behind that. And Analyze in Excel is essentially exactly the same thing, only now we're using that data model that's up in the Power BI service. So if you build a Power BI model, whether it's with Excel or Power BI Desktop, and publish that out to the service, you can now use a different Excel client on-prem to connect to what amounts to a great big SSAS server in the cloud. So that's one of the reasons. And I got a blog post on that as to why I think that's really exciting. I think it's a sign of what else is to come, which is the big reason I find it exciting. But yeah, just to explain what it is a little bit.
So what other big news things out there before we jump in and let Ted unmute and join us on camera here?
A couple of things. One of the features that's been available in SSAS now, and it's been available in SSAS if you connect to it with Power BI, but only through the Enterprise Gateway, is the ability to do row-level security. All other data sources are kind of all or nothing. So you either get access to the report and all of the data in behind it, or you don't. It doesn't. Most data sources don't respect the back-end security restrictions. You're going to use a proxy account to build the report, and everyone who can access the report basically uses the same proxy account. That's not the case if you're going through to SSAS in the back-end. But now the service, and I haven't used this yet, so I can't really comment on how effective or easy it is. But now the service allows you to build up a set of roles like you do in SSAS, but for any data source you may be connected to in Power BI. So now you can start to implement row-level security at the back end, so you may not see the same thing that I do. There's advantages and disadvantages to doing that, but there's certainly a use case where that's necessary. So that's something that's new that's been added to the service in the last month.
Yeah, this is the #1 ask that I've had going out and working with clients in the field, and that you and I have had personally doing sessions together and doing pre-cons together. This is the thing that everybody always asks about, is how do I get to that point? And we didn't have it in Power Pivot in Excel. We didn't have it in Power Pivot for SharePoint. This is now where we can actually get to it. I, like you, haven't had a chance to play with this yet. I'm excited to be able to do that. But if it holds true to the promise, this is going to be the big hot feature that people are really going to look to move because of.
That's it. Also, well, it's not really new this month. It's actually not really available yet, but it is in preview form. If you've played with the new version of SSRS, SQL Server Reporting Services, it's got a whole mobile component to it. And that's different than what we've come to know and love with SSRS. There's a lot of good improvements to core SSRS. But if you recall, last year, Microsoft bought DataZen, another good Canadian company out of Toronto, that did fantastic visualizations aimed at the mobile space. That's all been incorporated into SSRS now. And they had a server-based part of their product, and then they had a client-based part of their product. The client-based part of the product has been rolled into the Power BI mobile client. So for iOS, for Android, for Windows, if anybody's still using those, you basically, that same application that the same app that you use to access your core Power BI reports, you can also access your on-prem SSRS mobile reports. So that's been available for about the last month, and it works pretty well too.
Very cool.
But that's there in you can download the what is it? What did we just say it was? Release Candidate 3.
Yep.
It's available. You can stand that up and try it out. But hopefully that's going to be available in production by the next time we have one of these shows.
Yes. So I think we're ready to invite our special guest in now.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Why don't we get Ted? I got to tell a little story about Ted first.
Please.
Story?
I've known him. I've probably known him longer than he's known me. But Ted is actually responsible for Unlimited Viz existing. I went.
Ask for stock.
I went to a training session in Toronto in January of 2006, where Ted was basically doing a Microsoft roadshow, introducing everybody to the whole new SharePoint 2007, because it was vastly different than 2003. And I was at that and went back and talked to my business partner, Ed, who I think is on with us today. And essentially, we got to do this. We got to do this. And from that, we basically decided to form a company to focus in on SharePoint and business intelligence. So, Ted, either thanks or it's your fault.
I get the credit and the blame. That's great.
That's right.
Well, welcome, Ted. Thanks for joining us today. We're very excited and happy that you agreed to do this. And judging by the number of participants we have in the chat room, definitely everyone's excited to get to hear what you have to talk about.
Well, super. Yeah, I think working with the Power BI platform and jumping into the developer space, is what we're here for today. And so I've been doing a bunch of work with that, getting pretty excited, finding lots of breakthroughs of things that are kind of neat. Hoping I can share that with some of you today.
Oh,
how do you, John, how do you want to break down? Do you want to just kind of talk through some of the categories of custom development?
Yeah, I guess we've talked an awful lot in the past about Power BI, what it can do from an end user standpoint. We haven't really addressed dev, and the development space in Power BI. It's not obvious as to what you can do. We've taken one approach to it. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. But I guess the first, I see it the dev space is consisting of four different elements really. There's the core API. There's content packs, the ISV type content packs that we've dealt with. There's custom visuals, and then there's the new recently announced embedded piece. And I know you've done an awful lot of work with the API and the custom visuals. So we should probably start there. I've had a look at the API and played with it by virtue of working with Azure, but I'd love to know what your experience has been with it.
Okay. You want me just to do a little test driving here? If I go ahead, and now I would like to share my screen right here. And so now, do you see a wonderful picture of the United States?
We do.
Okay. Now, I guess, one of the first things to point out is just like the moment of clarity we had with SharePoint a ways back. There was all these ASP developers. SharePoint came along, and they just started creating all these things for SharePoint, to which people said, SharePoint does that automatically. We don't need help from you, buddy. So I think we have to have the same, realization for developers of what you get out of the box for free. And so where are the good areas to add extra value with development? Now, there is a SharePoint REST API. That's the first thing I'm going to show. And the neat thing about the REST API It's going to get much better, but some of the things it does now is it allows you to take something like a PBIX file that you've created with Power BI Desktop or possibly just an Excel workbook and automatically upload it to your site, as if you were doing it manually. I'm not going to demo that. I'm going to demo creating a data set and then adding rows, because that gives us the basis for a real-time dashboard. Some of the other things it can do would be to host reports and dashboard tiles. So I'm going to show some, but not all the capabilities that we have inside there. So let's go ahead and start. I've got this little sample program right here. And then, one other thing to note is that I have a couple different GitHub directories I'm going to show today. So 2 are going to be mine in GitHub Critical Path Training, and this is Power BI developer samples. So the first 3 demos, you can basically go find this and get access to.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Now, I like making shared code. Now, one thing that you have to do is you're going to create an app. I'm just going to demo a simple console app. This could be embedded inside of a server-side application as well. You could create it in, a client-side only Angular style application. But one of the things that you are going to have to do is somehow register these applications in Azure Active Directory. And some developers are better than that at others. Some are just getting started. But note that if I move over to my Azure portal, and then we go and look at the applications in a particular directory, what we're going to find is that you need to add one of these things inside there. The first one is going to be this one right here, the Power BI REST API demo. And note that, in addition to having things about properties of the application, what's very important is that we configure permissions. So when we look at this, there's a certain set of permissions that we have inside here. For the first one, I'm just going to be read and write data sets. Now, if I go back here and I kind of take a look at app.powerbi.com, also note that I can basically just type in apps, and that gives me this little page. And kind of the point of this is that if you don't go to Azure, you're not comfortable working with those apps in Azure, this page allows you to put in information, click OK, and it basically will add the stuff into Azure. If you can't do it yourself with Visual Studio or by going to the Azure Management Portal. Now, for the very first demo.
I had no idea that existed.
Well, it's there. The problem, if you use it, it doesn't do all the permissions that are outside of Power BI. So I think most developers find that they just have to go to the portal and get used to messing around. Now, there's a couple things, some of the magic secrets that you need to know are things like the endpoint for where we go for this API. And quite often, these 2 URLs, which is the resource URI and root URI, are the same, but not with Power BI. They're kind of different. You have a client ID of what kind of represents your app inside there. Now, you can see that this program is pretty simple. I just have this thing which is called the Power BI Workspace Manager. And here's where all the code lives inside here. So one thing you have to come to terms with is getting access tokens. Now, if I drill down and I go up here and I say manage NuGet packages, one of the things that you can see is that I have 2 packages inside here. One is the Microsoft Identity Model Client Active Directory. This is what we call the Active Directory Authentication Library for Active Directory. This one's just going to help me kind of move JSON back and forth to the data.
Oh, sorry, you weren't talking about me. Ted, are you using the new MSAL model there, or is that the old ADAL?
Well, this is ADAL. I mean, this is Active Directory Authentication Library version 2.
Cool.
But basically, that can interact. Now, let's go ahead and start this app right here. So the way I have the app, when you start it up, it basically tries to get an access token, and the Active Directory Authentication Library then interacts with the current user. So now this user goes ahead and signs in right here. So once I go ahead and sign in, what you're going to see is that, let's go back over to this for 1 second, let's go back over here. When this turns back up, you can see that I have code now that's kind of adding on the fly. So the whole idea that you can build a data set, build a table, build reports and dashboards on top of that, and then write code to continually add rows inside there, is what gives us real-time dashboards. So today you really can't create a real-time dashboard without either writing code to basically push rows inside there or working with Azure Analytics streaming service inside. Now, if I go and take a quick look at this developer tool, which we all know and love, which is Fiddler, you can see that each time I want to send rows inside there, let's go back over here and kind of look at the JSON that's coming inside. You can see that basically it's just a piece of JSON that's going across that gets added in. Same thing with, when it's time for you to actually, create a data set inside there. Let me go ahead and get out of full screen mode so I can show this one particular thing, which is going to be the JSON for a new data set. I want to create a new data set. It's going to be called My New Data Set. It's going to have 2 tables, countries and states. There are the layout of rows. So what you'll find is that, it gets to be pretty easy using this model. Let me go back over here, and if we go kind of take a look at the data set right here, you can see exactly what you've added inside. Now, taking this same concept a little bit further right now, I have one very similar app, which is called Campaign Contributions. And because we're in a political season, kind of made sense to create one of these. But it might be kind of a better demonstration of what we can do with one of these. Okay, so now this app is going to start right here. Now, note that this is demoware. So this is nothing more than a simple console application that's running on my desktop. But at the same time, you could create one of these applications, put it, in a more reliable place for it to go. And so, here's just kind of an example of, we have this dashboard that we've created, and the dashboard is kind of simulating contributions coming in. And we have the geolocation. So each time a contribution comes in, we're kind of mapping it to a certain place on the map. But to create this type of a dashboard experience, gets to be one of the big promises of Power BI. And certainly the developer, is going to be kind of at the center point, of creating that type of experience. Okay, let's let this guy bake for a second. Just let it run inside.
I want to know what an alpaca meter is.
Okay, well, when I did this demo for the first time, I had to add some color commentary. So there was a guy named Alpaca Joe who was going against Donald Trump. Donald Trump said some very mean things about alpacas. So Alpaca Joe had to come in and defend him. Alpaca Joe's running for president. He needs $1 million. So this dashboard, was basically his campaign funds, and he's the defender of the alpaca. With the no alpaca left behind. So the alpaca meter just has the thing that we're trying to hit. Some of the other BI things that we're showing here is I have some code that's basically adding rows in. Now with the Power BI REST API, you can call in about once per second, and you can have hundreds or thousands of rows in each request. But for each one of these rows, I'm also basically putting it in a 30-second time window. So now you have these kind of tumbling windows. And one of the things, that Power BI is really trying to get at is not to see what we did over the past year, but what's going on right now, what's going on today, what are the things I need to react to. So having real-time dashboards, predict the present or predict the future, is one of the ways where Power BI as a platform is trying to kind of move beyond traditional BI, that kind of looks at, the past and things inside there. Okay, now one other example of using the Power BI REST API has to do with hosting reports and tiles in a different application. So I have this Power BI content viewer inside here. Now this also has to be registered as an application. Now, when you create a client-side application that needs to authenticate against Active Directory and you're using Angular, there is also an Active Directory authentication library for JavaScript that makes it so easy, because you basically just initialize and say, here are the endpoints that I need to go to. And then if I take a look at this Power BI service code right here, I'm basically just making simple requests across, going to API powerbi.com/1.0/groups or /my.org datasets. And this Active Directory for authentication library for JavaScript, along with the add-in for Angular, makes it so whenever you're making a call out to one of these endpoints, it automatically interacts with the user to log in and gets an access code, then takes care of the access code behind the scenes. Now, let's go ahead and run this thing right here. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And so once again, it's just a simpler Angular application. Let's go ahead and bring up this guy right here. Notice that Visual Studio now gives us this very annoying VS Hub that typically we want to get rid of, so we don't see that. Okay, let's go ahead and log in. And now as I log in, one of the things that I want to do is I want to get the set of reports. So when I go ahead and I click on reports right here, let's come back here and kind of take a look at what it did when I was coming back there. So down here, when I finally can do that and get reports right here, and then we kind of go look at the response, what you can see back here is when you ask for a report, it gives you the ID, the name, it gives you the web URL so that someone can track that down, but it also gives you this thing called the embed URL. So basically, that's the value you put inside of an iframe. Now, what we'd like to be able to do is click on one of these reports right here and basically, see the report come alive inside there. Now, there's one big trick. And the big trick is you create an iframe, you basically set the source to be the embed URL, but then you have to inject the access token inside there. So this gets to be a little bit tricky right here, but just to kind of show you the long and short of it, when you want to inject the access token, you have to basically implement the JavaScript on load event. And the best way to be able to do that in Angular is with a custom directive. So I've created this custom directive, and the idea would be let's hook up to the load event. So now I can add this custom directive inside here. Okay, so now that you've seen that, let's go back to this one report right here. And what you can see is we create an iframe, great, and then we add our custom directive inside there. And what this is going to do is allow us to create an iframe, but allow us to use the Angular way to have the load event fire and call our method inside here. And then the final piece that we have right here is if we go up and we take a look at something like the reports controller, you can basically see that we have to have this special little on load. And what's going to happen is that when we load in, this method gets called, this gets the access token inside here, and then it has to have this one particular action called load report that it sends in. But the long and short of it is now we can basically just take reports, load them in, and they can basically just load freely, into wherever they are. And this is for a particular logged on user. We have kind of the same idea with dashboards, except you don't load a whole dashboard in. But what you can do is you can load in individual dashboard tiles, and there's the exact same dance where they give you the embed URL, but you have to figure out, how to inject the access token inside there using their special technique to be able to bring those up. Okay, so that's my first set of demoing right here, just kind of talking about the Power BI REST API.
So that's very interesting. I just learned a fair bit in there. One thing might be, just for those who aren't familiar with it, you threw out the term Angular a few times. You might want to explain to everybody what Angular is all about. No, not all about, but in a few.
Well, Angular is a client-side JavaScript framework for building large applications that follow the single-page application model. So basically, they're all client-side apps that have no server-side code, and they're getting to be very, very popular. They were very, very popular in the outside of Microsoft developer community. Now they've gotten to be very popular inside. So they're just, that's, if you look through the job recruiters, Angular happens to be probably the hottest developer skill to have on your resume right there. So hopefully that give you enough of that inside there.
But yeah, the JavaScript, and it's interesting. A little while back, I saw somebody threw up into the SharePoint store a SharePoint app that lets you embed Power BI tiles. That's obviously using the techniques you've just shown here today, and I can see one of the very often requested features that I've heard is, can I embed my Power BI reports in SharePoint? And no, not really, not yet. but there's nothing stopping you from doing that yourself using the techniques you've just outlined, right?
Yeah, you can absolutely embed them in SharePoint. SharePoint has some scripting disabled by default, which gets in your way. But you need to be able to have an iframe and then have some client-side code that can put your access token inside there. You need to be able to get your access token. So there are challenges of making it work inside of SharePoint, but it's not impossible.
Wow, okay, that's good. And I know that the Power BI team is working on the embedding story. We've seen that a little bit with the anonymous embedding just recently, and I know they want to get parameterized reporting in a web part style framework soon. But who knows? You can roll your own for the time being, I guess. Okay.
Well,
so,
should we?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. So the other side of that is visualizations, right? Yeah, is that what you got up for us next?
Yeah. Well, why don't we just kind of jump in there too? So let me go ahead and share my screen one more time. So one of the things that I think,
Ted, before you go on, for folks in the chat room, for who are watching us here live on the web, there is a chat function. If you have questions for Ted as he's going through, we'll make sure that we ask them here on the air as well. But we're going to have Ted keep going. There's the button down at the bottom of your screen called chat. Feel free to punch in whatever any questions you have as we go along.
And if Ted tries to ignore you, Jason and John will make sure that the question is pushed to me and I'm forced to answer.
That's it.
Okay, so let's say that I start creating a report inside here. And so one of the things that we have is we have this pane of visualizations. One of the things that I kind of noticed is a year and a half back, the Power BI team was always saying visualizations, visualizations, visualizations. And then they just kind of got lazy and started calling them visuals. So I just think the term visual and visualization is the same thing. It just matters how much energy you have or how smart you want to sound when you say that. But if you look at, the potential of this Power BI platform, the fact that Microsoft has created the visuals framework to be totally open-ended, to be completely extensible by developers, is one thing that really sets it apart from, everything Microsoft has done before, and even sets it apart from something like Tableau. Microsoft definitely has some ground to kind of catch up. But if I look back to, the 80s, Windows versus Apple, why did Windows succeed? As a great business platform, it's because developers could come in and do stuff. And the fact that common developers can come in and start basically growing out the visualization story, to me, is a huge part of it. Okay, now, when you create visuals, a couple things that you're going to have to do is start working with the visualization library. So before we even get to work with Power BI, I want to show this simple little demo because there's this library which is called the D3 library. And I kind of just want to show how we can kind of get up and going. Now, another thing about the custom visual story is you really just need JavaScript. You don't need TypeScript, but all their samples and all their tools kind of assume you do use TypeScript. And I had been kind of pushing off learning TypeScript for about a year, saying, this thing is going to blow over. And finally, as I started working more with custom visuals, that's the thing that really pushed me into learning TypeScript. And I have a background in C# and C++, and wasn't very hard to pick up. And all of a sudden, I love it. That's just a month or two later. So here I have this class right here, created with TypeScript. Remember, when you use TypeScript, it just gets compiled into JavaScript. But just to kind of show you this theory, I have this simple data set. Now, when we're building visuals, you have these scalable vector graphics, or FVG, and you have this D3 library. Note that if you just open up a simple ASP.NET application, this surprised the heck out of me, and then you can install the package for jQuery and the package for D3, but they also have the TypeScript type definition files for them. So when you start using them, it gets to be really easy. Now, let's go ahead and kind of start this application right here. And so what I want to do is just kind of show how we kind of create a visualization. So one of the things you have to kind of worry about is, how much space do you have to work with? What are the offsets? And then you have this idea in D3 of you have a domain and a range. So let's say that your numbers that you're charting go between 1 and 10. your range is going to go from 1 to 10. I'm sorry, your domain goes from 1 to 10. Then you have a range, which is pretty much the pixels on your screen, goes from 0 to 600. Now, we have these things that are called scales, and they're the things that translate between the domain being 1 to 10 and the range being pixels being 0 to 600. So I'm going to create this scale inside here. You can see that when you create a scale, you give it a domain, you give it a range inside. And then one of the things that this does for us is it lets us draw these axes. So let's go back here. Let's go ahead and click on the second one. And all of a sudden, this tool allows me to create axes inside here. So there's the axes I've created, 10 ticks. This has got 8 ticks inside. And then we want to start drawing something. So let's say that I just take the first 2 things out of the data set right here. So I find those 2 values, I give them an X set, and now it's just a matter of SVG, append, circle, and I can go ahead and add something to my chart. But the real zen of D3 is that now we're going to draw a set of points. And so here we're going to say group, select all, circle, and here's the D3 way. I say data, enter, append, circle. But now I have these functions down here, and what's going to happen is just going to enumerate through that set of data. So let's go ahead and click on this guy right here. So, really kind of understanding D3, how to work with domains, how to work with ranges, build scales, build axes, and then chart points. That's going to be something that you have to master, before you even get to the custom visual space. Okay, so given that, now let's kind of go back over to Power BI. So let's say I'm working with Power BI right here, and I want to start working with custom visuals. Notice that I can, last time, John, I showed you the apps. There's another one, which is Dev Tools, but at least they have a menu for this one. So if I go down to Dev Tools, we come back over here, and now you have this little thing to create custom visuals inside here. Okay, now also note that if you want to see the custom visuals, Microsoft has all the custom visuals that they use in production are available to you inside of this Microsoft Power BI Visuals repository. You can download this. For instance, I followed their steps right here, and you clone the repository on your machine. And once you've done that, you can kind of get this workspace set up where you kind of have all the custom visuals that they have up there, plus visuals that you have. And so this kind of gives you an ability to come back, start working inside. Now, I'm going to take this visual right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over to this page right here with the Dev Tools. One problem is you need to kind of keep the visual named your visual. But let's go ahead and take that. Let's go ahead and kind of paste my work inside there. And I can click and automatically see this thing running inside. So what I have right here is just very simple. It is an iVisual, and it has to have an init method and an update method inside there. And you can add lots of other methods. While you're fooling around, let's come down here and just kind of say, oh, by the way, I want to throw some custom CSS inside there. So what I'd like is I'd like the background color to be white inside here, maybe the border. Let's go ahead and say 1px and black, and what border style we want it to be solid. And maybe we'll just put a little padding inside there as well. We'll put that at 12px. Okay, so now let's go ahead and click and compile this. And you can see basically it's running inside here. Now, what's really neat about that is when you click compile and run, watch what we can now do. We can basically go back here to our Power BI personal workspace. And so let's go ahead and create a new report inside here. I'm going to create this new report, and there is your visual. I added inside. First, you just get this watermark. Generally, you're going to need to add something inside to at least one of these, before it starts working properly inside. Let's say I take sales revenue and I drag it and drop it into one of these things right here. And all of a sudden, there's your visual starting to work. Now, if I go back here, let me hope I'm not making you seasick by moving around too quickly.
Not at all.
But you can see that when you create a visual, you specify different capabilities. And one of the things that capabilities is going to do for you is if I go back over here and I select that, the fact that I have different capabilities is going to make different wells available. So I can say I have 2 categorical series of data and 1 numeric series of data, and it's going to fill this. Also, when you look over here to formatting, the custom capabilities that you add inside there are going to light up certain parts of that. So getting used to that's going to be important. Another thing that you can see is that update gets called all the time. And when update is called, let's go ahead and kind of jump inside here. You can see that when init is called, they pass you options, and you can get things like your host. You can find the current viewport, which is going to tell you, the width and height of what you're doing. So one of the things that gets to be common is that as people are moving this around, generally you're going to need to redraw your graph, under the, the new pixels that you have for width and height. Another neat thing is, as you're going and testing this thing inside here, let's go back to this tool right here. We'll go ahead and we'll test our tool. You're able to come here and interact with it. Now, one last thing. I'm going to go ahead and click delete. If I click delete, it throws away my work, but it puts back kind of the custom visual that they have for everyone when they get started. And now that we have that inside there, if I go back here one more time and we take a look at their custom visual, I think this is just a good way to get started here. Let's go ahead and add this custom visual inside here. Let's now go to take something, such as we want to see sales revenue, and we want to see sales revenue for our customer sales region inside here. And you can see that they have a table, and it's very much, created for a responsive design for mobile. As it gets smaller and smaller, it kind of crunches down inside here. So I can go back and take a look at that. But also, if I'm using, some type of development tool that supports F12, I can go ahead and click the F12 button right here. Once this thing comes up, I'm going to look at sources. If I look at the one with no domain, there is my visual inside here. Maybe I want to trap what things look like, in one of these particular methods. So if I go down here to the update method, and we'll go ahead and set a breakpoint. Now we'll come back here and do a refresh on the screen. And if I can do all this right, what I should be able to do, is fall into this mode inside here. I might have to do it one more time, where we come back here and put in sales revenue right here. I'm just trying one time just to kind of fall inside the debugger to give you a sense of how to get started. Okay, so I'm going to drop that in, and then we'll go down to customers, and we will go ahead and drop in the sales region. And now it looks like, okay, well, what I was trying to do is kind of drop into, start single stepping through the code, so you can get a sense of what it takes inside there. Let me one more time see if I can get outside of this mode right here and set this breakpoint inside of update. And now if we do a save, and we'll just name that report anything. And now that we've saved that report, one more time, we'll see if we can make this demo work. I'll go ahead, we'll run this right inside here. And you can see now we've kind of fallen inside. So now you can kind of see how your code is going to act in runtime. And I'm actually running inside of the Power BI service. If we kind of take this options inside there, different data sets are going to have different things inside. But now let's move ahead just a little bit right here. And, what you're going to see is that, if you have options right here, what are the things that are going to be available? And you can see your different data sets. But you're going to be passed off series of data, and figuring out how to use D3, to connect all that is going to be, how you're going to, become someone who's, proficient at working with the custom visuals inside there. Okay. So I think at that point, that's kind of the demoing that I wanted to do. So let me go ahead and start sharing, push it back to you guys.
Let me push my brain back in my ear a little bit here, Ted. Wow.
I told you he was the demo guy.
I bow down. Not worthy at all here, sir.
Yeah, but you probably have time where you talk to people and you have friends in life. So, I'm
I wouldn't go that far. But thank you for the compliment and thinking that I would. So Ted, just out of curiosity, for anybody who needs a little bit more than the 40 minutes that you just spent demoing for us, how does somebody go about finding more from you? I'm assuming you have a web page and that people can come and learn from you at some point.
Well, we couple different places. Well, one, Critical Path Training. We have Power BI courses. We don't quite have a developer course yet. We're probably going to, publish a schedule for one of those over the summer. Right now we kind of have more of the everything you can do without Visual Studio course. And we're kind of working with someone in Microsoft and maybe even going to create a certification course. So it seems like Power BI certification, is something that's being worked on inside of Microsoft. And, hopefully we'll see that by Christmas. Another place is the Power BI user group, pbiug.com. So there's a big online user group, and I'm doing some development content inside there as well. And every time I put a proposal in for a conference, today I'm kind of putting proposals together for BI development talks.
Very cool. Excellent.
And as you say, you've got your GitHub repository as well. We should make those available after the fact and drive a fair bit of traffic to Ted's site, I would think, because
that would be good.
that would definitely be interesting. That's excellent. And just to cover off the picture, we kind of touched on it before. A couple of other development topics are things like the ISV content packs. It just might be worth talking about what they are versus organizational content packs. They're the organizational content packs are there for when you're in the service and you want to roll up something that you've done, basically everything with a Visual Studio, and distribute that out to your organization. The ISV content packs are those services that you go into within the service with get data and pull out data from Google Analytics, etc. And as I was mentioning before, tyGraph. Our experience is it's not so simple to get into those ISV content packs. You can't just go out and get a kit and start publishing things out to the store. You actually have to engage Microsoft in doing that in order to put in things like parameters, etc.
That's the opposite of the organizational content packs. To create one of those, it's 3 clicks of the mouse, and there's really nowhere that you can get into any detail or configuration options. So they're just so simple. They haven't really opened those up. But you turn to what you're doing, and all of a sudden, what were you working with? You working with XML or JavaScript object?
Yeah. Well, you build out your data. You build out your data models. You build out your visuals, and your reports and your dashboards, and you kind of bundle all that up. But you have to build these things called M extensions, or you don't have to, but you pretty much have to if you want to incorporate parameters. So, for example, with tyGraph, when you hydrate your tyGraph model, what you do is you don't have to, but you can pass it in specific groups or specific date ranges in addition to all of the queries that were already baked in. For that stuff to work, that gets rolled into some XML, into a package, but it's done by Microsoft on the service side. It literally gets put into the Power BI service by them for you. It's a manual process right now. It involves signing contracts with Microsoft, etc. But
the first skill that you need is schmoozing Microsoft and getting them to buy into you're being worthy to put your content pack in their store.
It involves talking to Wukash at the Ignite conference, and yes, exactly right. So, but that that's going to get easier. And from what I understand, there's going to be some measures that will let anybody go through a process, things similar to publishing something up to an app store, with just about anyone. So that's what That's what the organize, and then it's yet another step, by the way, to get it into the Power BI desktop, the desktop product.
So we've covered off 3 of the main dev angles. We've talked about embed, we've talked about custom visuals, and we've talked about content packs. And the last one I know that we had talked about covering a little bit was the Power BI API and actually using the Azure Streaming Analytics services there as well.
A little bit backwards, Jason. We haven't talked about embed, but we did talk about the API.
I'm sorry, I thought we did. I thought we covered some of the embed stuff.
Well, we used the term embed when we talked about embedding things with the API, but we didn't use the embed.
Not a developer, guys. You got to remember
feature that's part of the.
Yeah, and that's really the Power BI embedded. What they're calling Power BI embedded isn't really a Power BI service. It's an Azure service, and you can get basically all the information on it is on an Azure website, not on the Power BI website. So it's basically taking the technology the Power BI guys have, having that all hosted in Azure, and letting you as an ISV use the Power BI technology to power your own reports. And the big difference there with what Ted did is when I do that, I'm taking on, I don't have to have my customer sign up for the Power BI service. They don't have a license, nothing. I am paying as an ISV for every render that my customers have. So you want to think long and hard about whether you want to do that. We've taken the other approach. Our product, tyGraph, requires customers to have a license. Now, it can be a free license for the most part, but we let them handle that on their own, and they can extend that. But I just wanted to be clear about what the difference between, what Ted was showing, which is the way, frankly, I like it, and the new embedded service, which is, well, if you're looking at Nintex is the first one I've seen that's announced a product. Their new analytics product is going to be using the Power BI embed service. Going to be. So anyway. That's kind of a quick overview of all that stuff.
Very good.
Have we done dev justice? I think Ted did.
Well, so then you have to get into some of the things that I didn't talk about. Is that we're waiting for very important things from the Power BI REST API. Today, I can create a data set, but there's no way that I can push in a report or dashboard. So all my demos have to be kind of crafted very carefully, because you create a data set, then you could build reports and dashboards on top of them, and then you write code to say if that data set still exists, go right into it. But what they have coming down the pike is for me to be able to create reports and dashboards, probably in the Power BI desktop product, then to be able to kind of pull those as probably a big blob of JSON or XML. And so then what we'll be able to do is, in the Power BI REST API, I'll add a data set, I'll upload a report, I'll upload a dashboard, I'll then have to attach those to my data set by finding the GUID for it, and then that will get up and running. They'll also give us the ability, to upload a data set, but then to kind of change where the location of the data is. So the obvious example would be kind of changing from your dev SQL server to your production SQL server, as part of your automated deployment process inside there. So there are some neat things coming down the pike there that are going to help.
And one of those limits is if you're used to working with Power BI, you just go in. I'll just create a calculated measure. I'll create a calculated column using DAX. I can go modify my model. You can't do that with the API. You also can't do that with streaming analytics. I built out a weather monitoring streaming analytics project a few weeks back, and bumped into that in a big hurry. So it limits what you can do visually, right? I want to show the most recent measurement. Well, the only way you can do that is with the natural language query to control what's going on in the visual and plunk that down on the dashboard. So it's exactly what you're saying.
Another thing we talked about, John, is, should we put Power Query in the M programming language and DAX programming into this? And we decided, not to kind of focus on those today, because those skills are really required by non-developers. For people that just, abdicate expertise in creating reports, you better be able to create the DAX measures you need for advanced reports. However, you can take M and DAX as far as you want, and we're certainly going to see lots of DAX that no non-developer will be able to, understand or write at that level. So as a developer, really kind of being really good at Power Query and really good at DAX and Power Pivot beyond the state of the user, I think is another criteria that you have to have if you're going to claim, you're a Power BI developer.
No shortage of new languages to learn.
And then also R, and Python.
Oh,
You need to
yes.
know those by this weekend.
R is on my list. Python, I'm just ignoring right now.
I'm looking forward to Z. When we get to Z, then I might consider taking up a development language. So if we're at M and R, I'm going to wait for Z.
We pronounce it Z.
Yeah. Sorry, my Canadian friend. So I know we're zeroing in on the top of our hour here. So Ted, thank you so very much for joining us.
Really?
We're going to pop criticalpathtraining.com into the chat room as well. But I'm also going to post in here the Future of SharePoint registration. Make sure that's May 4th next week. Make sure you register for that and go check that out. It's going to be an awesome event.
We got a class going on in SharePoint 2016 next week. So we're going to have a room full. I think we got 12 or 13 developers, and we're going to take a break on Thursday to kind of watch the release of the product that we've been using all week.
Well, that's awesome. And there's your URL for Critical Path Training as well. Ted, any codes or anything you want to share with our audience today? I saw a blast email that came out just a little bit earlier about something superhero-like. Really cool visual that you guys put together in some marketing for Maggie's.
Kind of silly stuff. They kind of have us as superheroes. I think they gave me Superman and a cape, and our other instructors. I think Scott Hillier is. I can't remember what. I think he's the Joker or something like that. No. I think we actually stayed all with superheroes. But I guess I just kind of like to say that the Power BI platform. I have a lot of promise, that for myself, I kind of see where we were with SharePoint in 2006.
Yes.
We have an amazing platform. We have all this marketing at Microsoft that's kind of ready to go. We haven't really kind of seen it other than some of the Sunday afternoon football commercials are starting to talk about analytics. But we could really have a space that explodes and gives you just tremendous, professional skill sets to make you very valuable. So I encourage you to look more into Power BI and kind of invest in the skill sets there, because I really think the next decade is that of data and analytics.
It sure is.
So
and if you look at the team at Microsoft, they've grown, I think the announcement was 5 times in the past year, a factor of 5x.
Wow. We've got one question here in the chat room asking about drill down capability in Power BI. John, you want to talk to that real quick?
That was in the news section, but I elected to not talk about it. It just showed up this morning. You can drill right down into in Power BI Desktop. You can now drill down into the row level for any of the visuals you have, and you've been able to, for a little bit of time now, access any visual and export the data behind that visual to, I believe it's a CSV file. And that's one I don't use an awful lot. If it's not a CSV, it's an Excel. So there's a couple of ways to drill down into the underlying data in Power BI.
They have a new way to create hierarchies, which is new over the last couple of months, where it kind of looked in Power Pivot in Excel, you were able to create hierarchies, back in 2013.
Yep.
And so just recently now, if you have a data model, you're able to kind of go to your fields view, right click on a column, let's say it's year, and say, create hierarchy. And then you can add the quarter and month. And then all of a sudden, a whole bunch of the visuals will just work automatically and give you a drill down facility.
But some of them won't.
Yes, not all.
So we have a question from Jay Harris. Is there any Dev API to work with the Power BI Excel add-in?
Not that I know.
I know nothing inside there. I haven't used the Excel add-in and turned on Fiddler to kind of see how it was talking.
Mechanically, what the Excel add-in's doing is it's firing up an image of the visual to the desktop in Power BI, and that's all it's doing. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Alrighty. Well, I know that we're running close on time. I want to throw out a couple of things. Our next Bifocal show is going to be next month. And John, we have another amazing guest that is joining us next month. And that is going to be on, I believe it is May 19th.
19th. It's a little earlier than normal. I'll be traveling the following week. So yeah.
I'll be traveling that week, John. So I'm doing it from London. So, I'm just saying, step up a little bit more next time. Let's do it in a regular time, sir. But
okay, I'll be in the air.
That's a different story. I booked my flight specifically so I could spend time with our bifocal family. So I'll be working from London that week, actually for the next for 2 weeks there. So I'll be over there working from the Rackspace offices over in London for our next show. But Casper is going to be joining us talking about the Supermodel show. So let's start from Supermodel, talking about SSAS, Power Pivot, and Power BI in 2016. So really exciting stuff. Make sure you mark your calendar to join us.
Just to tell everybody, Casper is, I don't know exactly what his title is, but he basically owns SSAS and the data model in Microsoft. Let's put it that way. He's from Microsoft.
We were very lucky after the last show. Kai and Gregory didn't run away screaming. Instead, they went off and told their friends to come and join the show to help foster the conversation. So, folks, please come back and join us then. Lots of exciting stuff. A couple of shameless self-promotion. Both John and I are doing together at SP TechCon. We're doing a pre-con that's in Boston, June 27th to the 30th. We'll be at SharePoint Fest in Seattle, again, doing another pre-con. And then hopefully we'll be together in New York on July the 30th as well. SharePoint Fest in Seattle is August 15th to the 18th. So we're going to be hitting all the coasts.
I'll be at SPC Adriatics as well at the end of May. That's in Zagreb, Croatia. So that's going to be fun. That's why I'm traveling next week.
And I think I will be somewhere over in the UK, joining in some user group over there. I think SUG UK is the user group I'm hoping to hop into. And hoping to sit on my couch at some point in the next 3 months, but I'm not sure that's actually going to get to happen. So, but as far as today is concerned, Ted, thanks so much for joining us. John,
thank you.
To see you again.
Really good to see you, Ted.
Guys, you're welcome. I'll just call out that on August 29th, we're running our Power BI boot camp in Tampa, Florida. So anyone who wants to drill down, that's not a developer story, but it is a in-depth Power BI boot camp training course. But thanks for having me on the show.
Awesome.
It was very fun to come and talk about what I've learned.
Thanks for joining us. I always appreciate watching you present it.
Thanks,
awesome,
guys.
Ted.
Thank you very much for taking the time today, guys. Thank you, John and Jason and Ted. Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who attended today. I just want to let you know that today's session has been recorded and will be made available for on-demand viewing later today. And you can access it by going to the website or the URL that's right there on your screen, the itunity.com/BIFocal. It's also the same place that you can go to register for the upcoming presentation on the 19th of May. Hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you then.